Hey, Charger fans, welcome into another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. Alex is unable to join us today, so it's just me and Tyler. Tyler, how are you doing today, dude?
I'm doing very well, Stephen. Thanks for asking. Alex, I hope everything with your family is okay. I also want to send up my heart to the Schottenheimer family. Marty Schottenheimer is currently entered hospice care because of his complications due to Alzheimer's disease. I currently work in a lab where we focus on Huntington's disease, so I kind of get the idea, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It's
Yeah.
awful. I feel terrible about it. So wishing them all the best. Third thing I want to say, Stephen, officially happy anniversary. When you guys are listening to this, it will be February 4th. I can't believe it's been a year. It somehow feels both shorter and faster than I would have thought. Everything I think that I'm weak at, I think you're really strong at. And so I think we've made a good duo over the past year. Took a little bit of a break in the middle, but it feels good to be back. I think this podcast helped me get through, the year,
Oh,
the
yeah.
terrible season, all these things. Just having, looking forward to this, whether there was no news or tons of news. It's been fun. So happy to be here a year later with all the things we have going for us.
Yeah, it really has been, and I'm really hopeful that this offseason is a little more entertaining than last one.
Yeah.
Covering a team that had just come off a losing season with COVID. That was, we had to stretch our creativity a little bit over the summer, and Jason and
I
I,
just
and then
quit.
Alex. Yeah, well, we were on break. But yeah, man, I want to give my thoughts and prayers out to the Schottenheimer family too. My grandfather had Alzheimer's too, so it is not a fun experience to see someone who you cherish go through those kind of things, and hopefully, I'm just wishing for the best for them and that family. So
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna go over some Chargers coaching news, and then there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter by other fans and things like that about the Chargers and what they should do at the wide receiver position. And we have been planning to do kind of a free agency buildup, and as well as kind of address draft needs, breaking down each position group. And so we're going to start today with the wide receivers. And I can't wait. Tyler and I have each been studying the wide receiver class of the draft prospects. And it's been a lot of fun over the past couple of days to get into that really into the nitty and gritty, so to speak. So let's start with the coaches, though. I think the biggest one that we haven't really addressed is the quarterbacks coach, who is going to be Shane Day. He has done a lot of great work in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan as the quarterbacks coach. And he was also an assistant offensive line coach in Washington when Sean McVay is there. So I'm really excited about this hiring. He's got a lot of experience in the Shanahan system. And really, everyone who knows me knows that I've been wanting Justin Herbert to get a piece of that, right? And so I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be a good hire. I know everybody's sad to lose Pep Hamilton and what he meant to Justin Herbert. But I really think, Brandon Staley is building a really good coaching staff coming from a lot of different offensive backgrounds. And Shane Day is really just another example of that.
Yeah, this guy's coached almost every offensive position. I don't think his experience and resume makes as much of a good hire though as his relationship, I assume, with Shanahan and the ability to carry that flavor over here. He's going to be in Herbert's ear telling him how to run that particular offense. I don't think it'll be exactly that offense, but it could be. And if that's what Staley is trying to implement here, great. And if everything works out, some of the chatter about hiring Staley was them losing, offensive coordinators every year or every couple of years or whatnot. I mean, having Shane Day to just switch in right to offensive coordinator should Lombardi leave for a head coaching gig or be fired, perhaps. Sounds good to me. So,
Yeah.
For him to go from his quarterback coach, teaching him this particular system, being in his ear the rest of the way, I think that's great for Herbert. It does sting that Pep Hamilton leaves, but it's better now after 1 year. If Staley's the head coach, and Lombardi and Day and all these guys are the right guys for the job, then moving forward, Herbert will have the same system the rest of his career. And so I think this is a great start for him.
Yeah, and Brandon Staley talked about building a system around Justin Herbert.
Yep.
and being able to not impose one system on him. And that's really what we're seeing with the offensive staff. Joe Lombardi and Frank Smith have a plethora of experience in the New Orleans Saints system that has been so good over the years. Shane Day, and then Kevin Koger is going to be the tight ends coach. He was a quality control coach in Green Bay. So he's got some experience in the Kyle Shanahan system through Matt LaFleur as well. So there really is a very nice molding of offensive minds going on. Add in the assistant offensive line coach, Sean Sarrett, who's coming from Pittsburgh and who worked under Mike Munchak, who, I know a lot of people don't really know offensive line coaches, but Mike Munchak is one of the best in the business. I want to say he's in Denver right now. He's done a lot of great work. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, but
I don't know.
And Pittsburgh has been another, offense that's been really, really, one of the top tier offenses over the last few years in the NFL too. So I think Shane Day is building a really good staff in Los Angeles.
It's a great, I assume it's going to be a great staff. I love that he's taking guys from different backgrounds, aside from the fact that they're all connected to Staley in some way at some community college or some like newspaper company or whatever. He's finding guys that are so multiple. I think he talked about being multiple, or I think that was Ronaldo Hill that talked about being multiple. I don't know. Every coach that every coordinator that has spoken, or every coach that he's brought in as a position coach, they all seem to be on the exact same page as Staley. Here's what I want to do. We're going to be multiple. We're going to be, put stress on the opposite side of the ball. We're going to put our players in the best positions. We're not going to force them to be one thing. Everyone's going to have input. We're going to be the best team that we can. And I love that. And the fact that Staley has, not with all of them, but with most of them, some sort of relationship already, I think that's really key. I mean, that's why we started. You, Jason, and I, that's why we started, because we knew each other. We had kind of worked together already. So it was easy to just go, okay, we're going to start now. Finding somebody else, randomly would have been really much more difficult, but working with the three of us and having that synergy already is so good. So I really like the way this staff is coming together. It remains to be seen what the heck they want to run. Yeah. They do have to go get some pieces, and they definitely need an offensive line. But for now, I do think they have enough minds in place to make this a very, very good and perhaps unique offense moving forward.
Yeah, obviously, the offensive line is going to be something that we're going to continue to talk about. But, at the end of the day, coaching, it's all about relationships. And whether that's Anthony Lynn and Gus Bradley didn't have any prior relationship, like to my knowledge, at least. So
right.
They really, it was just they matched up philosophically. Goodness, can't speak tonight. But there's different ways to attack coaching. Brandon Staley, I don't know if he knows all of these coaches. I don't think he knows, like Derek Foster, the running backs coach, for example. Sure. But there's different ways to attack it, and a lot of guys tend to work with who they know. And, we've seen that time and time again in New England when Bill Belichick will lose somebody to a different staff. They'll get fired from that staff and they'll go right back because Bill Belichick is comfortable with that person. We even see that in Kansas City. Like Kansas City has, every single person that is on the Kansas City staff was also in Philadelphia or Green Bay with Andy Reid. So, coaches do this, and it's all about who you know. And, we've talked about just the communication and disconnect that was happening with Anthony Lynn and his staff. I don't think that's going to happen now because Brandon Staley knows all these guys. He has relationships with these guys, like you mentioned with us. Yep. Like there's that synergy. And so it's just exciting. I don't know if the Chargers are going to be better. I don't know if they're going to be contenders, but I know that they're going to be, more well-coached because the communication is just going to be that much improved.
Well, that alone is the key right there. Just being more well-coached and be able to communicate. I always go back to this, but why in week 17 am I hearing at halftime that the Chargers want to switch to more man against the Chiefs?
Yeah.
It's like, what happened? And there's just that it was never really discussed by Lynn, but there was that kind of disconnect between Lynn and Bradley. And, Lynn's like, oh, I'm going to put my hand in the defense a little bit more. And then whatever happened with Ken Wisenhunt where they needed to fire him.
Yeah.
And then, Shane Steichen and Lynn having like kind of arguments on the sideline, like, well, I didn't call that, or I didn't want that. I wanted a timeout. I wanted to kick a field goal. I wanted to run the football.
Yep.
Everything for better or worse is going to come from Staley. And I just think it's going to be so refreshing. We're going to go from the most frustrating, like game management season I can remember to maybe like the smartest game management we've ever seen, or at least the most aggressive, or at least the best attempt at trying to win. We have not seen that for a while. It's what made the 2018 season so special. I think Kansas City going for 2. Yep. And so just having that mentality moving forward is going to just have such a great ripple effect across this organization. And I'm really proud to say that I think the Chargers have turned a corner and are trying to finally be a legit organization.
Yeah, and I think that the emphasis on analytics this hiring,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's just they said that they were looking for innovation, and we'll see. Obviously, it seems like everybody's saying the right things,
Yep.
uh, but I mean, it really does feel like they're saying the right things, and so I'm really excited about this. Derek Foster, the running backs coach who I mentioned, is coming from Iowa, and Michael Peterson, the resident Iowa fan on Chargers Twitter, was very happy about it, and we'll see. Like I mentioned, I don't know if he knows Brandon Staley previously,
Hmm.
but he's done obviously a lot of great work at Iowa, and the thing that I'm personally excited about is that Iowa and their offensive line, it's just
Mm.
beautiful to watch. And so I don't know if he's going to be able to target any Iowa offensive linemen in the draft or anything like that, but I just think that the offensive line is going to go in the right direction, because all of these coaches have come from places with strong offensive lines, whether that's
Good call.
Lombardi and Frank Smith, Kevin Koger. I mean, obviously Green Bay has one of the best offensive lines. Brandon Staley and the Rams and even the Broncos offensive line was better than Chargers. So, the emphasis on the offensive line, I think, is going to be huge. And obviously we'll cover all of that and talk about that. But I'm excited about that part of this coaching staff as well.
That's a really good point. I mean, I kind of pieced it together with Lombardi because, the Lions had a good offensive line and the Saints had a good offensive line. But you're right. A lot of these coaches came from places with really good offensive lines. That's a good point, which is great because that pick at 13 is a sweet spot to pick one. And round
Yeah.
two and round three and that other round three pick and every way till 7 and undrafted free agents.
Oh yeah.
Um, is there someone in the draft that's from Iowa that's any good? I haven't watched enough of those guys.
There's Alaric Jackson who played right tackle for them.
Okay.
He's not my favorite. Tyler Linderbaum is the center there. I think Linderbaum is a really solid, day 3 interior offensive
Okay.
lineman prospect. So I would think that it could be something. I think Alaric Jackson is a nice developmental tackle. I know everybody kind of hates that phrase because of Trey Pipkins, but Linderbaum is someone that I would be really interested in potentially snagging in like the 4th or 5th round. And I think I want to say he's like a former tight end or something like that. So there's some good athleticism there as well.
See, look at that. Steven does things that I don't do well. He knows everything. He has when we do our first live stream and you ask questions, I'm just gonna sit there and let Steven answer everything. He knows everything. He has I don't even know if you've put up grades for those guys yet, but you just talked about them like you already like studied them, which is crazy. And you knew that
Well,
one guy was a tight end.
yeah. I have not studied Linderbaum extensively, but I remember watching Alaric Jackson last year when I was studying Tristan Wirfs. And,
Mm.
I did like his potential. I was hoping that he would take a step forward this year. And I haven't watched any of the 2020 tape, but based off of the Senior Bowl, that step forward did not happen for Alaric Jackson. So
Mm.
we'll have to see. But yeah, man, I'm excited about the offensive line prospects. If they drafted 9 offensive linemen, I would be thrilled. Like, like give me
They
an
need
offensive lineman
6.
at every pick. I know. I like how in Daniel Popper's article the other day, he was like, "This might be snarky, but they need talent upgrades at all 5 spots," and
Yep,
it's true, they do.
they do. They need they're going to end up needing 4 if they cut Turner, which I think is going to happen. And we're going to talk about that at some point. And they're going to need a guy behind Balaga for 2022, probably. So they really
Yeah,
at least they probably need 5 guys. So good luck.
yeah. Good luck, man. So. We wanted to talk about the receivers today as well, and so you and I have been texting back and forth today about Tutu Atwell from
Oh
Louisville.
yeah.
He's a fantastic talent, and I'm really excited about this receiver class in general. Cornell Powell from Clemson is another guy that we've been
Yeah.
talking about, and then the other Louisville receiver, Des Fitzpatrick. So let's talk about this first. We talked about Mike Williams potentially being involved in in an Orlando Brown trade, and the guys at Bullbeat have been talking about potentially cutting him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Mike Williams is going to be on the team with his current price. But what do you think they should do with Mike Williams this year?
It's so tough because there's no real good answer. On the one hand, I think he could be a good number 2. And at
Yeah.
times he is shown to be a decent number 2. On the other hand, he costs a lot of money. On the third hand, I don't have. The Chargers don't really have a spot to be able to invest in a wide receiver early enough to replicate what he does, unless they believe like a Cornell Powell, Ray Fitzpatrick, those guys that we're talking about can replicate Mike Williams. I think they can eventually, because I think Mike Williams at this point is a bit of a 1 or 2 trick kind of pony. As talented as I think he is, he just hasn't evolved. So what to do with him? What I don't think you can do is extend him. I know that cap hit is going to suck this year, especially when the cap is so low or so much lower. But I wouldn't extend him. Like if the Chargers had extended Hunter Henry prior to last season, I think that would have been a risk. I think it would have paid off so far for 1 year because Henry was pretty good this season. But Henry's issues with injuries just kind of feel like football things that happen. Mike Williams has come out and said that he doesn't care about his body. He just wants to make the catch, which is like kind of a good mind. Like, yeah, I don't care what happens. I'm just going to make that catch. Like, that's good. But the guy is down on the field like he's Mufasa when he's dead. Like 4 times a year. He just lays there. He ends up being kind of fine. He pulls it together for the next game. But there's no longevity in that.
Yeah.
There's no, and unfortunately, he hasn't developed in a way that you could say, okay, moving forward, Mike Williams is going to have that part of his game still, but he's going to also be able to do these other things. He really doesn't right now. Some would argue that's because that's the way the Chargers have used him. Maybe, but I just don't think he's ever been a guy who can consistently get up, across the middle and get open in the middle. He's more of like that sideline guy, which is good. It's important. But I think you can replicate that. Maybe not replace it entirely this year, but you can certainly replicate some of that because the Chargers, some of their worst losses and some of Justin Herbert's worst performances were because all he would do is target Keenan Allen and he wouldn't know what else to do because there was nowhere else to go. It's like, why? Like I know Keenan Allen's good, Justin, but you got to stop targeting it at some point. But there really wasn't another guy. And then when you have no offensive line, you take away everything deep. There wasn't a whole lot for him. So I agree with you. I think he will play on this one year, I guess, contract right now. I just don't think they'll extend. I just can't extend him. I can't get behind that. As much as I like him, I can't get behind that because there's no longevity there, and you have to give him a legit deal. It's not like maybe I don't know Michael Davis or okay, let's say like Forrest Lamp. You can give him like a 2-year deal where you get out after 1 year. You can't really do that with Mike Williams. I don't think you have to give him not high tier money. You probably have to give him 3 or 4 years. So I just think you're stuck with what you got and make it work with the rest of your players with the low cap.
Yeah, that really is what I think as well. I would personally, like if it were me, I would love to see, them give him like a 2-year extension and then kind of, like you said, have an out after year 2 and be able to restructure the contract so that this year's cap hit is minimized a little bit and you can push some for next year when you have potentially, a 201, 204 or whatever the case may be cap hit instead of Tom Pelissero did just tweet out that it might be 185, which is fantastic news.
Okay.
That's more than what it was previously thought to be. So I would love to see that for Mike Williams, maybe like a mini extension. I know it's not going to happen. I think it's going to be, you're either going to keep him on his current price tag and hopefully, he's able to either outproduce that and then you can extend him, or he outproduces that and then he prices himself out of Los Angeles, which I hate to say that. I love Mike Williams. I think he's so much fun to watch. And, you brought up Malcolm Floyd the other day. They're very similar players. Like they really just, throw their body on the line. Yeah. But, giving him a 4 or 5 year extension, just like, it's not something I'm interested in. And, I do think they'll take a receiver at some point in this draft because they have 9 draft picks. Like, they can afford to take a swing on a receiver. We haven't really seen much out of the other draft picks that they invested in. And obviously when your 3rd and 4th best receivers are undrafted free agents, that's kind of a problem. But we'll see what happens with Mike Williams. Ultimately, I do think that he's going to stay on that price tag. And, I would love to see some improvement. I really would. And everybody in training camp said, oh, Mike looks great. Mike's improving his route running and Mike's doing all these great things. But then you watch him against New Orleans and he runs that slant. He barely gets any separation. He
Mm-hmm.
catches the ball and immediately goes down. And like, if that were Keenan Allen, that would have been a first down and the Chargers would have won the game.
True.
Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And he's a great jump ball guy.
Sure.
That's all he is right now. That's all he is. And I love Mike Williams. It's so much fun to watch, but we have to have this realistic conversation. He's a jump ball guy and a deep threat, and that's it.
And I'd be more, I mean, I wouldn't be okay with paying him 15 million a year, but I would be more okay with the whole situation if he were, able to play 15 games, 16 games, and he was just a jump ball guy or a guy who takes a drag to the house or something. And that's about it. And that's okay. He's a wide receiver too. He will never be the wide receiver one on this team unless Keenan Allen gets hurt. But he doesn't play enough games for me. Like I'm just not. It sucks. It sucks that I don't want this player that I really like on the team. I don't remember the last time I had a player that I liked so much that I also just wanted to kind of get rid of too. But yeah, like you said, they have 9 picks in this draft, more if they trade back, which I think is a strong possibility this year, given all the holes in their roster and the cap issues. So
yeah,
there's enough receivers in this draft, and we can talk about that in a sec, that I like that you don't. I mean, I've watched a lot, but there's enough that I think you can make that move and just prepare for the year after this where you don't have Williams.
Yeah, I think that's well said. So before we get to the draft, guys, it really is a frustrating spot for the Chargers to be in terms of drafting a receiver because, they did draft KJ Hill, they drafted Joe Reed, but we didn't see like anything out of them.
Yeah.
And so like, could they upgrade that spot and get some more depth and get a great playmaker there? Sure. Like, could they draft, a Tutu Atwell in the 3rd round? I would be thrilled with that selection. But, they also have these 2 other guys who we just haven't really seen. So do you like, I don't want to, they're not going to move on from them, but like, what do you think we can expect from Joe Reed and KJ Hill this year?
It's so tough. I would imagine that what they can do this year is kind of what we expected them to do last year. I'm hoping with an offseason, maybe a more competent coach, obviously having reps with your starting quarterback that you did. Well, I take that back. I think they would have had reps with Herbert in training camp because they weren't starters. What are you going to do with them this year? What do I expect out of them? It's tough because we didn't get to see much of them. It's kind of like the issue we're having with the whole roster where it's like, well, I kind of want to cut Chris Harris and I want to cut Trey Turner, but we also didn't really get to see them in their full, potential. Maybe we're starting to talk about bringing in someone's not replacement, but, signing some sort of high paid backup for like Derwin James or Drew Tranquil because we don't know because we didn't see them. And so these guys are kind of the same thing for me. We didn't really see Joe Reed. We didn't really see KJ Hill, except for early on. So I don't know at this point. I think the bonus of having a new head coach is moving on from, the old guard or some guys that just were sticking because they were Lynn guys or because they were Bradley guys or whatever. So at this point, I think there's a spot for both those guys, but they do need a Mike Williams light or someone who can, with a little bit of size, who can separate, maybe like a Dre Fitzpatrick. I don't know what to expect for them this year. It's so tough to gauge because I know the talent's there. I know Joe Reed is talented, but then they just didn't activate him for any games. And I know KJ Hill is talented. And I didn't watch enough KJ Hill tape to be able to tell you how he did on his routes and how he looked. I guess we'll see. What do I expect out of them? Hopefully one of them gets a job. There's a spot on this team for Joe Reed. I don't know about KJ Hill. Well, not like a starting role for KJ Hill. I think there is a spot for Joe Reed to succeed in this offense. I just don't know what that is yet, especially because I was so confused during training camp hearing that he was taking reps at running back, and then he ends up being not at all a running back. So I don't even know really know where he fits because I know he has talent.
Yeah.
But the coaching staff really confused me last year. I guess we'll find out. I would just take a guy and let it battle out.
Yeah, this coaching staff did some really confusing things, man. And like,
it was odd.
It seemed like they were kind of like building and building for Joe Reed to like figure out a role for him.
Yeah.
And then they gave him, 2 or 3 touches against the Jaguars and it was like, this is awesome. Like, the Chargers need, like, if you're looking at the four main receivers for the Chargers and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, and Tyron Johnson, they need a fifth guy to be
Yeah,
like a yards after catch guy. Like they need some
sure.
elusiveness. And that's what Tyrone Williams brought to the team. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why he was speed. That's why he was so good, because he could take a slant and take it for 20 yards. He could take a hitch and he could take it for 20 yards. They
Mm-hmm.
don't really have that, but I think Joe Reed could be that.
Yeah,
And, that's why, I would love for them to get like a Tutu Atwell or an Amari Rogers, because they need that yards after catch guy.
mm-hmm.
And so there is a role for him. And I know that there is. And the fact that he was taking running back snaps, I was like, at the time, I was like, okay, there's really going to be a really exciting role for Joe Reed, be able
Yeah,
to be, this team's version of Deebo Samuel, and get 2 or 3 carries a game. And then you get,
sure.
2 or 3 catches a game, and hopefully you break one and pop a big play. So I think there is a role for him. I think KJ Hill, the steal of the draft talk, pumped by me and by others, was very
All of us.
premature.
Yeah,
I had a 3rd round grade on him. I really did. And he was a receiver that I really liked, because he's a very good separator and he gets open.
yeah,
And the Chargers need a second one of those too. And so I think that there is a role for him. I just don't know. Like, to me, you bring in more bodies and then you let it work itself out, because you just need more talent,
yeah,
and you need to give Justin Herbert guys that can make it easy for him, whether that's another separator or another yards after catch guy. They got to get some more easy plays and not have, the offense be, okay, I'm going to chuck it deep, and if it's not there, I'm going to go Keenan Allen for
right.
17 targets. Like, I love Keenan Allen. I think he's
Sure.
an amazing receiver, but this team needs more easy plays. And if you look at like what the Saints have run and like what the Rams have and all these, and even the Packers, they all have a receiving room that complements each other. Obviously not very much in Green Bay, but they have a receiving room that complements each other. In New Orleans, you have Michael Thomas, who's their version of Keenan Allen. And then you have Traquan Smith, who's a deep threat. And then you have Emmanuel Sanders, who's a yards after catch guy. And with the Rams, you have Cooper Kupp, who's the yards after catch guy, and Robert Woods is the separator. They drafted Van Jefferson to be the deep guy. And so
Yeah,
they have all these complementary pieces. And with the Chargers, it's like you have a separator, you have a jump ball, and then you have 2 guys who can run really fast for a straight line.
right.
And that's all we saw. And it's just like, I would have loved to see more out of Joe Reed and KJ Hill, but I do ultimately think they should and probably will draft at least one receiver.
Yeah, I agree. And they definitely should. So someone asked me on Twitter and I didn't respond to them. I wanted to see what you thought about this. And I think you've already answered this. So why is Tutu Atwell, speedy as hell guy, my height, who and lighter, so I'm bigger than someone finally. What makes him different than a guy like Guyton or Johnson then?
I think that is a good question. And how skinny Tutu Atwell is, I think that's going to be, a big concern for some people, because he's listed at like 170. Like, that's kind of outrageous for an NFL player. And Devontae Smith is going to have some of those same question marks. And, certain teams they like their receivers built a certain way, and they're not going to they're not going to talk themselves into a guy who weighs 170 pounds and is 5'9". Like, but to me, like, the difference between Tutu Atwell is that he brings yards after catch.
Yeah.
And he like, Louisville loved to motion him, hand him the ball off or toss him the ball. And he would get 10, 15 yards on those end arounds every single time. We all saw what Jalen Guyton did in end around situations, and it wasn't very pretty. And that's just because he's fast, but he's not elusive. And I think that's a huge difference. And that's what the Chargers need, is somebody that can make people miss in space. So it's what made Austin Eckler so good, because he can make people miss, yards after contact kind of running back. And they need that as a receiver too. And I think Tutu is that, because he can make people miss and be fast. Like, you and I both saw him run deep routes and just roasting people. That Louisville quarterback was awful. Like,
he's so bad.
Tutu Atwell honestly should have had like 1,000 yards in 8 games this year. Like, he was burning people every play, and the quarterback either like didn't feel comfortable, or he would overthrow him or underthrow him. And there were other times where like he would throw him the ball, and Tutu's like 6-7 yards past somebody, but then he has to slow down and then catch the ball.
Yeah, 5'9" jumper.
Yeah, like that's not happening with Justin Herbert, right? Like Justin Herbert is just going to
Oh no.
uncork that thing.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good question by whoever asked that to you. But to me, like the difference of what the Chargers need and what they have is they need elusiveness, somebody that can
Mhm.
come in and get you, take a 6-yard pass or a handoff and make plays that other people can't. And to me, like that's what people don't understand about Tyreek Hill. Like everybody
Mhm.
thinks that
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill, the only thing he does is run fast and run a straight line, but he's so elusive with the ball and
he is.
with the ball in his hands, and he makes people miss. And like they'll hand him the ball off, they'll hand the ball off to him like 6 or 7 times, over the course of a couple of games. And that's really like the Henry Ruggs comparisons to Tyreek Hill never really worked for me because Henry Ruggs is just a straight line guy. And Jalen
Yeah.
Waddle has a little bit of that elusiveness in terms of yards after catch, but again, he's more of just like a straight line guy. So I'm not saying Tutu Atwell is Tyreek Hill, but to me, like stylistically, Tutu Atwell is more like Tyreek Hill than a traditional burner like a Jalen Waddle or a Henry Ruggs.
Tutu Atwell, man. There's something about they're just like a when you watch some guys, they just know how to they just like have a fluid, floating kind of speed
Yeah.
that Tyreek Hill kind of has. He just like it doesn't look fast, but he's by you. And
Yeah.
Tutu Atwell is the same thing. It's like I think he's fat and he just runs right by guys. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, how did you get around? How did you turn the corner like that? It just looked so smooth. He just looks so natural there. Whereas, yeah, like Jalen Guyton doesn't, that's not really his thing. It just looks unnatural for him to be able to do that. So I'm all aboard it, honestly. If you want to have, Joe Reed and Tutu Atwell, hey, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Like if you're boarding like a fourth on Tutu, or one of your thirds on him and you have Joe Reed, like that's not bad. So I would much rather have someone like Tutu Atwell in the third with either of those third round picks and Rayshawn Slater and then Dylan Radunes or something,
Yeah.
in the first 2 rounds, then Jalen Waddle, and then we're going with Radunes and then like Deontay Brown or something in day 3 or whatever, when I don't know when he's gonna go now. Like
Oh man.
it's bad. I don't, dude. It's so bad. I can't believe. Anyway,
So Deontay Brown, man, like he's a house. Like he's huge. Like I don't think people really understand how big like 360 pounds is. Like I think people like you look at somebody who is like a very large person and you're like, well, that's a big person. Deontay Brown's 360 pounds. Like he is so good at the point of attack because he's so strong.
yeah.
But I don't know if anybody else watched the Senior Bowl as much as I did, but they called a screenplay and Deontay Brown had to go out and block a linebacker. And you just like you see the running back catch it and he looks at Deontay Brown and he's like shit, this guy's not gonna get out of here for my
Yeah.
block. Like the
I don't
guy
think he made
had
it past
no
the hash
chance,
mark.
man. It
Yeah.
was oh man, he is just so big and slow, man. And I don't know, like you can't play in the NFL and be that big and that slow. Like some team's going to draft him. I don't want him on the Chargers. Like any part of me does not want him on the Chargers.
No, that would even fit what their that doesn't really seem like a Telesco kind of guy anyway. So do you want to talk about offensive line or it's
Yeah,
up to
why
you?
not?
All right, let's do it. So I've had this
Uh,
thought in my head. I keep coming back to it. It's irritating me. I don't agree with it, but I could see it happening. I think there's a shot Dan Feeney is back because it gives them draft flexibility.
yeah.
I think there's a chance that he's back because you can plug him in either way. If you don't get your center, he can go there. If you get, your left guard, he can get, what did I just say? I don't know. Point is, he can do one of those two things. I think that gives him a little bit more flexibility than like, I don't know, Sam Tebby or Forrest Lamp there. It's just been stuck in my head for some reason. And today that's the thing I've been chewing on.
No, yeah, I do think that one of Forrest Lamp or Dan Feeney will be starting this upcoming season. I just
Mhm.
think, you know, when you're talking about Dan Feeney, like he was not great,
Yeah.
but it's so hard as a center to have 6 players take snaps at right guard. Like
Yeah.
that lack of continuity last year, like I know it was frustrating and they do need talent upgrades, but the lack of continuity did not help anyone, and especially
Yeah.
when you don't have an off season. So it's possible that Dan Feeney could improve in his second year as a starter. I would still like to see them potentially draft like a Tyler Linderbaum later in the draft to maybe get some competition.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that Feeney will be back. I think they probably will draft a left tackle, and then
Yeah.
I think they might address left guard in free agency. And then you mentioned Trey Turner. It's too smart to cut him. Like it just makes so much sense to
It
get off
does.
of that. I think it's a $13 million cap hit, and it would be a $2 million
Yeah.
dead cap hit. So it just
I think
makes too
he's
much
zero.
sense. Oh, it's zero.
I think
Okay,
it's 0 to dead cap. So it's like,
then even better. So
yeah.
like this Tom Pelissero story, like adding that extra $6 million, and he said it could even get up to a 190.
Wow.
That's a game changer for a team like the Chargers, who could then realistically afford a Joe Thuney or a Corey Linsley and make a big splash offensive lineman signing, because I do think that they will at least sign one offensive lineman to like a bigger deal. I mean, Tom Telesco always does that. Like
Yeah.
it hasn't really worked out, but I mean, Russell Okung was fine for 2 years, and
Yeah.
Mike Pouncey was fine for the first year. So it just hasn't worked out recently. But I do expect them to draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds, well, at least one of the first 2 rounds, and I think there will be a free agent signing starting at one of the guard spots, and then
Yeah.
we'll see about Dan Feeney and Force Lamp.
If you want a lineman, I think this is not that really history should bear weight, really, because this doesn't really correlate. But whatever, I'll say it. If you want a lineman, first year of Mike McCoy, they draft DJ Fluker in the first round. First year of Anthony Lynn, they take Forrest Lamp, Dan Feeney, Sam Tevy. So it seems like, for whatever reason, well, I know the reason because the line is ass. But for, the Chargers head coaches, whenever they come in, they want to draft linemen, or at least take spend some priority picks. I don't know if they signed King Dunlap, but that wasn't a big deal in 2013. It wasn't a big deal until they extended him later on. So I think I think he will make that stamp, just like Telesco has done for the last 2 coaches. So I think there's optimism here. I think there's something here. I will say, I've also had this other nagging thought, and that was kind of all of last year, is that like they didn't really expect Tyrod, or they didn't expect Justin Herbert to start last year. Like they were going to let Tyrod Taylor just die behind that line. And it turns out he died in the locker room,
Yeah,
on the medical table. So I really I kind of feel like Tom Telesco just brought in some pieces, or let these other guys, test how they were going to be, Feeney, Lamp, Tevy. And then I think this year, I think they're going to start like actually building the offensive line. Cause I think this was the year that they were planning for, and they just had no idea that Herbert was going to be the starter in, 60 minutes.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So I do agree. I think Brandon Staley has talked so much about building this team around Justin Herbert and how excited he is. So I think that he knows, like, if you watch 2 games of the Chargers, man, you immediately know, like, this line was so bad last year.
Bad.
And Cole Toner was on the practice squad, and he was their best right guard. Like, it's just wild how bad they were. And I think Tom Telesco knows too that like his seat is going to get hot.
Yeah.
He knows that Justin Herbert right now is his saving grace. He has to know that. So
Good point.
I would think that would mean a big time emphasis on developing and drafting and signing free agent linemen. So we'll see. I can't imagine they don't take one at 13, or you mentioned the possibility of trading back, because it's been so long since they drafted, DJ Fluker being your best drafted tackle is kind of terrible. Like,
yeah,
I think Tom Telesco is going to take a couple swings at drafting a tackle this year, and he should, because they need it.
It's also just cost effective to draft some of these guys at this
Absolutely.
point. Like, there's some really expensive, you can get a 20, I don't know how old they're, like 29, 28-year-old, like Thuney and Lindsley, but just get that 22-year-old Slater, Darrisaw, whoever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you pretty much out on the whole idea? I'm just going on tangents now. I don't know where we're going anymore. Are you pretty much out on the idea that the Chargers are going to take Slater? Like, I love Slater. I've bumped him up in my grades, but I mean, it's the height issue. We talked about the O-line coach has never drafted a guy, shorter than 6'6". Not that he drafted them, but the Steelers during his time there never drafted a guy under 6'6" to play tackle until the 7th round. So do you think Slater is just like they're out on that idea, you think, or is or does Staley does not care because he prefers? I don't know if Staley has much input though.
I mean, I personally I think that the Chargers front office would look at Rashawn Slater as a guard.
Okay.
And really that's what it comes down to me. I don't think he's going to be available. Like,
Yeah,
I think the hype around Rashawn Slater has been building and building and building. And,
it has.
Daniel Jeremiah is very selective about who he like hypes up.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, for example, he posted a tweet about a cornerback from Kentucky. You bet your ass I'm going to go study that corner from Kentucky tomorrow afternoon
Right.
because he's very selective about these things.
Yeah.
And, he's not an end all be all kind of person. Like, absolutely form your own opinions. But I think the fact that he has Rashawn Slater above a Penei Sewell has more to do with what he is hearing than what he is seeing. Because,
Okay.
I think Penei Sewell is a generational offensive tackle, but he just turned 20. Like, he's super young. He's definitely, I know, it's insane, man. Like, you watch the kind of blocks he makes and you're just like, you're 19 years old. Like, how?
Wow.
It's just insane. So I do think that somebody and multiple teams would probably look at Rashawn Slater as a more polished prospect and therefore talk themselves. Like, the Cincinnati Bengals need someone to come in and be an all-pro tackle right now.
Yep.
So if the Bengals took Rashawn Slater at 5, Penei Sewell falls a little bit, that would not surprise me one bit.
So then there's the next part of the question. Got a couple of thirds. Mathematically, I think you could jump from 13 to 10 with your first third round pick. How are you feeling if Sewell's there?
To me, I think I would love Penei Sewell on this team. I
Sure.
Obviously, I feel so strongly about him, and I've been, stamp of approval, like standing on the table. That's me and Penei Sewell. So I would love him on the Chargers. I think Tom Telesco is not going to trade up. I think Tom Telesco realizes how many holes he has on this roster. And I think trading back is much more likely than trading up. And, I love everybody. I know everybody loves the potential of getting Penei Sewell to protect Justin Herbert, just like the good old days. I just don't think it's going to happen.
That's really boring, Steven. Nobody wanted to hear that, Steven.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
I would just hate another scenario where, like, I think the rumors were the Chargers were going to draft Jamal Adams, and then the Jets took him for whatever reason, and we're like, why did you take him? And they ended up going with Mike Williams. I would just be so bummed if Penei Sewell was right there at pick like 11 or 12, and then just somebody takes him, and you could have used your second, third round pick just to move up a little bit. So, but what I will say is I don't advocate for using both third round picks to move up. If they're going to do it, I wouldn't mind using one. Both would be a stretch for me. I know Penei Sewell is good, but I mean, shoot, even if you like Slater more than Sewell, I don't, but you need players. You can't go from 4 picks to 2 in the top. I think they have 3 in the top 100 and 4 in the top 120. I think Daniel Popper said. Yeah. You can't. You just can't sacrifice.
They need all of those, honestly.
Yeah, because there's going to be. It's not just the holes for this season; it's the holes for next season. We need, like, the Chargers are preparing for Brian Bulaga to be gone. They have to. They have to prepare for him to be gone in 5 games and out for the season. So, yeah, I'm not advocating for both third round picks, but I would. I mean, if we'll do the draft coverage live, and if they are 2 picks away from Penei Sewell, I will be screaming at the computer,
dude, screaming,
losing my mind.
Oh man!
And then they'll disappoint me by drafting Jerry Tillery again.
Yeah. Oh god.
So bad.
So I have this Google document of my notes on all these prospects, right? And I'm up to 15 pages, 16 pages now after the Senior Bowl. And I've got like 3 or 4 sentences on every one. And then if they participated in the Senior Bowl, I've got a couple sentences about that too. I'm going to share this obviously with our Patreon supporters once the time comes for that. For Trevor Lawrence, I just put he good. And then for Penei Sewell, I put best tackle prospect since Joe Thomas, in my opinion. Like, it's as simple as that to me. Like, sure, Rashawn Slater is a little more technically refined, but Penei Sewell, man, like the athleticism that he has at 315 pounds, and I think he's 6'6", and he's 20 years old. Like, the upside for Penei Sewell is outrageously high. Like,
Mhm.
I think in 2 years from now, we're talking about Penei Sewell as the best left tackle in the sport. Like, he has that type of ceiling, and he's got Hall of Fame potential written all over him. Perennial Pro Bowler, perennial All Pro guy. And so, yeah, of course, like if it were me, I would definitely trade up to get Penei Sewell, man. Like, but I think Tom Telesco is looking at this roster and looking at a coaching change, going, we need outside linebackers, we need
Yeah,
corners,
true.
we need all 5 offensive line spots. We
Yeah,
might need a running back, we might need a receiver, we need a backup quarterback. Like, our special teams
true.
is atrocious. Like, we need
God, you're
honestly,
right.
like special teams
Yeah.
is so bad. So I think
Mhm.
he's gonna, if anything, he probably will trade back. I think that's a very likely situation, at least try to. But then again, I could see a team like Washington, you know, looking at their roster thinking, you know what, we're a quarterback away. We're going to trade up to number 10 and draft Mac Jones. So, you know, in that case, if there's 5 quarterbacks drafted in the top 13, I think that would be a great situation for the Chargers. This conversation has just gone off the rails, man. I love
It's been a year. We still don't know what we're doing.
it. Oh man, but I would love Penei Sewell on the Chargers, man. It would just be such a cool thing to see, and he's so good, and the upside is ridiculous. But I like Samuel Cosmi a lot too, and I know we talked about him, and you watch a game like his game against Oklahoma, and you're like, dude, this guy has it. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
he's just a little too inconsistent for some people's liking, and I get that. And I'm going to do a Samuel Cosmi breakdown eventually, but
Awesome.
Cosmi to me is like if Justin Herbert was the X, like a lot of Cosmi for me is like me trying to imagine what he's going to be. And that's
Mm.
something that I didn't really do with Justin Herbert, was just
Yeah.
looking at what he was in that offense.
Right.
And so Cosmi has a lot of issues, and he's definitely got to get stronger. But to me, I think athletically, mobility wise, he just has more upside than a guy like Christian Darrisaw, in my opinion. And so my grade on him is it's a lot of like projecting and looking at the potential
Yeah.
there.
True. Yeah, that's the thing about these. I don't know. We keep going tangents. Whatever. Here we go. No one's listening anymore. It's like 4 people. It's probably like my mom, Brian, Brooke, your wife, and
There we go.
that's about it. Whatever. Yeah, my grades are interesting. I hope people don't take my grades super seriously. I hope they take what I write about the players a little bit more seriously, because like some guys, just the way we grade them, I don't like them as much. But like, I would take Cosme over. No, I wouldn't take him over Darisaw, but I would take him over. Like, if I have Sertan graded higher than him, and I think I might, I would still take like Cosme over him, because it's not just like Cosme is as a worse player. He's not, or maybe he is right now. But yeah, like you said, the projection and trying to make them, see what they're going to eventually be. And you're right. You're spot on with the Justin Herbert thing. That is one of the things I learned last year. I didn't really, watch anybody other than quarterbacks. And I didn't watch a whole lot of Herbert anyway, but I was just so stuck on, well, here's what he did. He just did the clap and he threw the ball and he clapped and he missed and he clapped and he didn't do a whole lot. But like, it's so funny because I had to watch Penei Sewell for this draft breakdown and whatnot. You go back and watch Herbert, and then you actually can see now what the Chargers might have seen while they were watching him. Because I was like, oh, that's exactly the throw Herbert would have made to Keenan Allen in this play, or the way he extends and throws. Like, so it's very interesting that you mentioned Justin Herbert, because I feel the same way. That's exactly one of the things that I learned from the past year for sure. Okay, continue.
No, I think that selection of Justin Herbert and how it has panned out really taught me a lot as somebody who looks at these players, because like I'll look at somebody like a Rondale Moore out of Purdue. To me, that guy probably should play running back. And so like if I grade him as a running back and somebody that I think could be a running back future, or like a Ty Montgomery type who can do a little bit of both, that's going to change how I feel about him. And it's going to change what my grade is on him. Versus if I'm just grading him as a receiver, I don't like him at all. But if I'm thinking to myself like, oh, I could see this potentially turning into somebody, who could do like Joe Reed stuff and do some running back things, then that's going to change how I feel about him.
Cool. All right, bring us home, Steven.
All right, guys. Well, this has been fun. Obviously, we've covered a lot of different topics here. I want to talk about our Patreon page for a second, because we do have a lot of good stuff coming there. Alex right now is carrying the load in terms of film breakdowns. our film breakdowns are going to be on our Patreon page for a week, and you have to access them at the $3 tier or higher. You get exclusive rights on our film breakdowns, and all three of us are going to start doing them at some point. I'm trying to get some all 22 film for all these guys, and specifically like a Samuel Cosme. So I'm working on it. I'll get there as well. And then we have our 1-year anniversary giveaway, which is that framed picture of Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, and Keenan Allen, which I'm really excited about because I bought one and I was like, I want to give this away to someone else too. So our Patreon page has a lot of cool information and stuff that we're going to do throughout the draft process, because I know not everybody listening to this has the time to sit and watch film or access to all 22 like we do. And so we want to be able to share that with people and give them some resources about these players, because the draft is just much more fun when you know about players, right? Like it's so much more fun talking about a Christian Darrisaw when you have an actual opinion about him. So definitely check out our Patreon page. We're going to be pumping out a lot of high quality content. And that includes our Patreon Q&As, which brings me to my last point here. We're going to do a live Q&A reaction on Friday. So this is going to come out on Thursday. So this is your notice, right? Tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing a Patreon Q&A live on YouTube. And so you guys will definitely want to tune into that. Again, our Patreon page is just a really cool way for us to interact with you. And even if it's just the $1 a month, we appreciate all that support.
Yeah, Alex's microphone didn't pay for itself.
Yeah, so that is true.
We had to pay for our own.
Yeah. So Alex was able to use some Patreon money, but that's okay, man. And it's just a fun way to, like I said, interact with us. And I also will say, if you do support us on Patreon, we do have a Guilty as Charged group message, which has been blowing up my phone as we have been recording this, talking about the cap and stuff like that. So make sure and check out our Patreon page. It has a lot of cool stuff. And we just want to be able to interact with you guys in ways that, we might not be able to without Patreon. And so definitely check that out. Tyler, that was a good episode, man. It was a long one. Hopefully people enjoy the different kind of tangents, but I thought it was a lot of good information. And hopefully Alex is doing okay with his family situation. And Marty Schottenheimer, man, I don't know, what the diagnosis there is completely, but yeah, I'm hoping for the best there as well.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed doing this episode. It went a little long. I thought we started later than we did. So I was looking at the clock and I realized, oh, it's been an hour. So everyone who's still here, thanks for being here. And anyone who's been here for the last year, thank you for being here as well. Really appreciated you talking with you guys and, building a community. I think every time we do a little podcast crossover or whatever, the comments are always, wow, this fan base is really growing. It's so cool to see these podcasts or the community come together. And so I think we're all, for us, Chargers Brawl, Locked On, Charger Chat, all these guys are, we're all building something really cool here. So let's keep it up. Bolt up, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well said. I was just able to record something with Charger Chat about the Senior Bowl. It was a lot of fun. And so I'm excited about where all of us are headed together. Yeah. So that's going to do us for us today, guys. Like I said, make sure and tune in to that live show tomorrow. I'm going to answer some questions and hopefully get out a good piece of content. And we will see you then. And thanks for tuning in.
Take care.